On today's show, the Houston Rockets with a gutsy, emotional win without Stephen Silas against the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Jabari Smith Jr. with the best defensive game of his career, slowing down the Greek Freak in this one. It was a team effort, but Jabari was the tip of the spear of that team effort. Jalen Green pouring in 30 points, electric offensively in this game. High energy, high octane, a lot of high-flying dunks for Jalen Green. And then Kevin Porter Jr. stepping up twice in the closing moments of this game with some huge defensive stops to seal the win for the Rockets. We're going to break it all down for you right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, as well as Rockets Watch. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin. The show, of course, at Locked On Rockets, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Now, today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. Now, we're going to talk about just this gutsy, emotional win by the Rockets against Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks, 97-92 final score. And the reason that it was an emotional win is because the Rockets were without head coach Stephen Silas for this game, who unfortunately lost his father, NBA legend Paul Silas, earlier Sunday morning. And my condolences go out to Coach, to his family, keeping them in my thoughts moving forward. But everybody at Toyota Center had a heavy heart going into this game. John Lucas was torn up about it. Paul Silas had been a lifelong friend, right? A 40-plus year friendship. Always spoke so highly of him. Stephen always spoke incredibly highly of his father whenever he was brought up in media settings. And so, my best wishes to the Silas family in this, really difficult time. But the Rockets responded incredibly well. Lucas came out and said after the game that this win was for Coach, that they went out there and got this win for him. And you could see the emotion of the guys, after the win, when they realized that they got it, seeing the celebration, seeing how animated John Lucas was on the sideline. He did a phenomenal job coaching the Rockets through this game, pushing the right buttons, getting incredible energy out of these guys despite the circumstances, right? Everything going on. Rockets could have come out very flat. They could have, not had the right energy from the jump, all that, but they met and I'll dare say they exceeded expectations against this Milwaukee Bucks team, and they did it with defense. They won this game defensively. This was an ugly affair, with both teams really struggling to shoot the basketball. The Rockets shot 22.2% from three, just 6 of 27. The Bucks shot 12 of 43 from three, just 27.9%. Rockets were 44% shooting from the floor. Bucks were 36.7%. This was an ugly game. This was like one of those grinded out, muck it up defensive games. And the Rockets answered the level of physicality that is demanded when you have to guard and deal with Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Rockets answered that call. And the guy doing the majority of that work was Jabari Smith Jr. Jabari had a forgettable game offensively, right? Just 6 points, 1 of 9 shooting. Didn't matter because he was so effective defensively in slowing down Giannis. This was the best defensive performance of Jabari Smith Jr.'s career, and this was one of the best defensive performances I think anybody's ever had against this version of Giannis, right? Two-time MVP, Giannis Antetokounmpo, world champion, held him to just 16 points on 7 of 17 shooting. This ties Giannis' season low. That's how inefficient Giannis was in this game. And it was a lot of it was Jabari. Jabari did so much work against Giannis, but it was a good collaborative team effort. The Rockets, throwing multiple bodies at, Giannis, shading him, sending two, double, triple teams, putting bodies on him during rebounding, all this stuff. But seeing the way that Jabari specifically kind of handled the matchup, the way that he guarded him, the way that he boxed him out, the way that he fought for rebounds, the way that Jabari was playing passing lanes, there was I think the best sequence of this game happened in the third quarter where Jalen Green hits a huge three-pointer, ties the game up at 55. Bucks come down, they're running a pick and roll. Grayson Allen tries to, deal the pass to Giannis on the roll. Jabari's right there, plays the passing lanes beautifully, right? Steals the ball. Gets it out to Jalen Green. Jalen lobs it up for KPJ. Alley-oop slam, Rockets take the lead. Giannis tries to come down on the very next possession and answer that, right? Tries to, just erase whatever momentum the Rockets are building. Goes up at the rim, and Jabari meets Giannis at the apex and blocks him, stuffs him right at the rim. Toyota Center's going crazy. Rockets get out in transition again. Sengun kind of loses the handle on it, kind of, hits the deck, gets the ball back to Jabari, and then Jabari, sees KPJ kind of flashing in from the baseline and gets it to him for another dunk. And Rockets go up a handful of points, 4 points at that point, and this was this 7-0 run by the Rockets. You could really feel the energy, the momentum kind of shifting in this game, and you could see just how emotional all the guys were. They were really into it. Again, seeing Jabari have those multiple stops on Giannis, and those weren't the only ones, right? I mean, there was a point, later in the game where Giannis was posting up Jabari. They get the entry pass to him. They start shading the second defender over. I think it was Jalen or KPJ starts cheating over, forced the ball out of his hands. Kicks it back out to the perimeter. Grayson Allen passes up on three, gets it to Jrue Holiday. Like they're swinging the ball around. Rockets are rotating well. They're doing everything they need to do. Basically, the Rockets forced everybody not named Giannis to try and beat them in this game. And it worked. Because not only did they make life incredibly difficult for Giannis, and Jabari was at the forefront of doing that, but they also did a really good job of defensively staying with their assignments and and defending guys the right way, right? There were moments where Giannis would catch the ball on the perimeter and the Rockets were rotating, but they weren't rushing to close out on Giannis at the three-point line. He's not a three-point threat, right? They were defensively disciplined in this game. They closed out on the right guys. They closed out on shooters. They forced the ball out of Giannis's hands. They stuck to the defensive game plan when they were double and triple teaming him. They were physical with him. Shout out to Bruno Fernando, who checked in was in there at the top of the fourth quarter and picked up about 17 million fouls in the span of a few minutes because he was just being so physical with Giannis. And you could say Giannis was getting the better of Bruno, but at the same time, he was making Giannis work to try and get anything to happen. He wasn't getting any easy buckets. And I think that was kind of the entire kind of idea of this game, is really making the Bucks work for every little thing that they got and forcing the ball out of Giannis' hands. He only took 17 shots. He had Jrue Holiday, who took 20 shots. Grayson Allen took 12 shots. Bobby Portis took 15 shots off the Bucks bench. Now, granted, they lost out on Chris Middleton in this game, right? Chris Middleton only played 6 minutes, only had 2 shot attempts. Those shots would have been divvied up quite a bit differently had Chris Middleton played the entirety of this game. Maybe we're talking about a different outcome. But defensively, the Rockets really answered the challenge of guarding this Bucks team, making life difficult for them. And I also want to give credit to Kevin Porter Jr., who stepped up in a huge way twice at the end of this game defensively, breaking up 2 back-to-back sets of lob passes to Giannis Antetokounmpo late in this game. He had the one late with a minute 20 left to go. It was kind of in transition. Jrue Holiday was handling the ball, and Jrue saw Giannis kind of flash towards the rim and tried to, get the lob up to him, and KPJ broke that one up. And then he had there was the ATO play by the Bucks a little bit later on with just under 30 seconds to play, where Grayson Allen tried to run the pick and roll, got into the paint, and KPJ had this play sniffed out the whole way. He knew that they were going to try to lob it over the top to Giannis, and he timed his jump just perfectly to be there to tip the ball away and prevent the easy lob, the easy lob over the top of the defense. So shout out to Kevin Porter Jr., who had 2, incredibly important defensive plays late in this game. Now, coming up I do want to talk about the offensive side of things in this one. Your Locked On Rockets player of the game, Jalen Green, who poured in an impressive 30 points in this dub against the Milwaukee Bucks. Was huge early, was huge late in this game. We're going to talk about that, but first, today's episode is brought to you by RocketMoney. Do you know how much your subscriptions really cost? Like actually cost, right? Most Americans think they spend around $60, $70 a month on subscriptions when the actual total is closer to over $200. That's right. You could be wasting hundreds of dollars each month on subscriptions that you don't even know about. The Rocket Money app shows you all your subscriptions in one place and cancels what you don't want for you. Rocket Money can even find subscriptions that you didn't know you were paying for. You may even find out you've been double charged for a certain subscription. To cancel a subscription, all you have to do is press cancel. It's that simple. Rocket Money takes care of the rest. Get rid of useless subscriptions with Rocket Money right now. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Seriously, it could save you hundreds of dollars per year. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's talk about your LOR player of the game, Jalen Green. 30 points, 12 of 21 shooting, 3 of 6 from long distance, 3 of 4 at the charity stripe, 7 boards, 3 assists, only a couple turnovers in 34 minutes of run. This was... first off, I will say the caveat that there were a couple people who suggested we split Locked On Rockets player of the game down the middle in this one. Give half of it to Jalen for his offense, give the other half to Jabari for his defense. Jalen won both polls on Twitter and on YouTube, so I will give it to Jalen straight up, but I'll maybe put a little post-it note next to it to say, hey, like Jabari, was in the running for this one because he had such a phenomenal game defensively that we talked about, earlier in segment 1, but I was really impressed with Jalen offensively in this game, right? For a game that was as ugly as this game was, kind of on both sides at times, Jalen had a really efficient night against a Milwaukee Bucks team that usually does a really good job protecting the paint and did a poor job protecting the paint in this game. The Rockets scored 56 points in the paint against the Bucks. They were a plus 20 points in the paint. Milwaukee only scoring 36 of their points in the paint. And I like Jalen's offense in this game for a couple different reasons. One, the Rockets did a great job of actually getting out and running, right? Like they were capitalizing on the forced turnovers that they were, getting out of the Milwaukee Bucks, steals, little deflections, whatever, playing the passing lanes and then getting out and running. They were also doing a good job capitalizing on the unforced turnovers by the Bucks because there were some moments where the Bucks just had, a sloppy pass, misread, whatever, little broken down possessions here and there. The Rockets capitalized on those, which is good. That's the sign of a team that is realizing, hey, if this other team is going to keep handing us like these opportunities, right, we've got to capitalize on them. And so that's great growth, a good sign of development for this young Rockets group. But what they were doing, right, is they were getting out in transition. They were, they'd get the stop, and then Jalen would, as soon as the Rockets, recovered the ball, or as soon as, it was all right, Rockets have it, right, Jalen was just, boom, off to the races in transition, had a number of, high-flying transition dunks, because the Rockets were doing a good job getting the ball out, kicking it ahead in transition, finding the open man. Talked about the sequence from the top of the third quarter earlier in segment 1. That was a beautiful set of possessions where the Rockets capitalized on those defensive stops and then got out and got easy buckets in transition because of it. So I liked that side of Jalen Green's game. He also did a really good job getting downhill against a Bucks team that does a good job shutting off the paint, putting a lid, basically building a wall around the basket, if you will. The way that Brook Lopez defends things, right, is the Bucks run like a deep drop scheme with Lopez when he's in the game, right? Lopez is tethered to the basket and doesn't get more than 10 feet away from the hoop ever, right? So how do you beat that? One, you get going downhill and you slice and dice, and you kind of, you attack and you attack aggressively, right? Jalen Green had a couple moments where he was able to draw some fouls, that kind of thing. But then the other thing that you can do is you can also open things up on the perimeter a bit more. So two of Jalen Green's three-pointers came off of these crushing screens that Alperen Sengun would set on the perimeter. Because again, Lopez is nowhere near the play on the perimeter. He's just outside of the paint, 10, 15 feet away from whatever's going on the perimeter at the three-point line. And Alp would run these little dribble handoff sets with Jalen where he would, hand the ball off to Jalen, set a, big time screen on Javon Carter, and then Jalen just completely freed up, boom, wide open three-pointer. So I loved those because it felt like Jalen was kind of getting the ball in motion to where it wasn't just okay, Jalen's got the ball, nobody's moving, it's an ISO fest, and that's that, right? It was, Jalen caught the ball and would have the opening, right? And then he was capitalizing on the opening, either getting downhill once the defender was off of his back or shooting the wide open shot once it was there. It felt like Jalen Green's decisiveness in this game was on another level. And I really liked the amount of control that he was given in this one, right? So especially down the stretch late in this game, it felt like time, if there was I swear, I need a time of possession metric, in football, but for basketball, to see which player held the ball the most. I know we have touches, but I really want a clock that says this player held the ball for this amount of time, because it felt like Jalen Green dominated the basketball a lot in this game, but it worked out really well. It felt like Jalen did a good job making good decisions. It felt like the offense was kind of predicated on running through him first and foremost when he was on the floor, and then Kevin had his moments where he stepped up and made some good plays, had some good reads. Kevin, still had a really solid game, 18 points, 8 of 16 shooting, 7 assists, 2 steals, had a block, 4 turnovers, a really, really solid overall night for Kevin Porter Jr. in this game. But it really felt like the Rockets made it a point to run things through Jalen, especially to close things out, right, late in this game. It felt like they were hey, Jalen's our go-to guy. We're running through him. And credit to John Lucas for, delivering that message, for capitalizing on that message in this game against the Bucks, because Jalen Green is your franchise guy, right? When he's having a big night, when he's got it going, then you need to continue to get him the ball. And the Rockets did that. Jalen Green was all over the basketball in this game. And then they did things to open him up, right? They did things to free him up. He had good defenders being thrown at him left and right in this game, right? Between, Grayson Allen, Drew Holiday, off the bench, Javon Carter, Grant Hill, Connaughton's even, not a half bad defender. The Bucks have some really good point of attack defenders. And the Rockets did a good job with screening, right? Sengun, Garuba, KJ, Tari, so many guys getting Jalen open, and then the Rockets just getting downhill and being able to attack the Bucks defense that way. I was really encouraged by what they were able to accomplish offensively, especially with Jalen Green in this one. But coming up, I do want to talk about the bench production in this game, some of the final little strings from this one, thoughts on Tari Eason and his low amount of minutes in this game, Bruno Fernando, his impact off the bench, Daishen Nix with a quality game off the bench for the Rockets. We're going to talk about those guys, but first, a quick message from our friends over at LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best, most qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's so easy to create a free job post on LinkedIn Jobs, and then once you have that made, all you have to do is add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you are hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it incredibly easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience, so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, this Rockets team is not a team that gets out-rebounded often. And they actually managed to get out-rebounded in this game, only by 3. So when they do get out-rebounded, it is usually a very close margin. This Rockets team is a team that prides itself on its ability to crash the glass, and that's been one of the better developments of this season, right? I think hustle, right, is such an underrated thing for players in the NBA, right? If you just want it more than the other guy on the other team, the ball is going to go your way most of the time, right? If you're just fighting harder for rebounds, if you're the first one to crash the floor for a loose ball, if you're getting back, if you're hustling back in transition, if you're trying to beat your man to a certain spot on the floor, all these little things that can be boiled down to effort, hustle, all of that. And the Rockets felt like they were out hustling, out working the Bucks in this game. And I think a big part of some of the moments in this game for the Rockets was the impact that the bench unit had. It felt like some of the physicality that was brought by Bruno Fernando in this game off the bench was really much needed. Bruno with 4.6 boards off the bench. Garuba had some solid moments off the bench in this one, although the stat line doesn't really reflect it. KJ Martin, really impactful off the Rockets bench. He's managing to put up starter level numbers off the bench. He had 10 points, 7 boards, 2 assists, a steal, a block, 1 turnover, 5 of 9 shooting. KJ Martin's a starter. It's only a matter of time before the Rockets ultimately, move on from Eric Gordon. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later, and hopefully KJ is the one who gets the nod to go into the starting lineup when that happens, because he deserves it. He puts up he puts up great numbers, great production, and his energy is infectious off the Rockets bench. Gary Bird, even in this game, Garrison Matthews only hit a couple shots, only 1 of 3 from downtown, but it felt like defensively, right? Like Gary Bird had a couple blocks in this game, and he had some really good defensive moments where he was just, beating guys to certain spots on the floor, rotating well, hustling on defense. And Gary Bird isn't the, most physically gifted athlete out there. He's not going to, ever impose his will from a physical standpoint, usually against an offensive player, but he just wanted it more in this game. And so that kind of like infectious level of defense where the guys were really hustling to their spots, they were rotating well, they were moving well, they were playing with a ton of energy, that is what won the Rockets this game. And so I do think Garrison Matthews was a big part of that off the Rockets bench. Even Jae'Sean in this game, Jae'Sean cut all his hair off, right? Maybe it was the hair that was bothering Jae'Sean, but and I was gonna run this back, but I can't even
You know what? I don't want to talk about Jae'Sean. I just don't understand it. I don't know what's going on, and it's a lot of Jae'Sean.
I can't even. I'm gonna have to delete that off the soundboard because Jae'Sean had a really quality game. He had 5 points, 4 assists, had a steal, 2 of 4 shooting, no turnovers in 12 minutes off the bench. This was a really quality outing for Jae'Sean. He did a really great job off the Rockets bench. Everybody off the Rockets bench contributed in one way or another. Even Tari Eason, who John Lucas did say after the game, he felt that Tari was a little low energy in this game. And I think the sequence that really kind of where you're like, oh, okay, what's going on with Tari is he went up for that monster slam, challenged Brook Lopez at the rim, right? And got completely it was a monster block by Brook Lopez. And it was a bit slow in transition getting back after that. Missed a couple shots. It wasn't Tari's night, right? But Tari is a guy who brings the energy every single night, and you're going to have a night where you're going to, be a little off, right? Where maybe there's a couple plays that don't go your way and you're not super in the game the way you normally are. I don't even want Tari didn't even necessarily have a bad game. He just, he played, 13 minutes off the bench. He got a couple steals. He had a rebound, but he wasn't the same level of impact that he usually is, right? Tari usually checks into the game and has more rebounds than he has minutes played within the first, handful of moments that he's on the floor. And you didn't see that version of Tari in this game. And that's okay, right? It's okay. You're going to, as a young guy, you're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have games where maybe the energy is lacking a little bit, and that's okay. John Lucas, credit to him for realizing that with Tari, for not sticking with him and putting him in a worse position where maybe the energy wasn't there and maybe, it compounded and it got worse, stuff like that. John Lucas did a good job. He recognized that it wasn't Tari's night, pulled him out early, and leaned on other guys in this game. And that goes to the kind of game management, game recognition, pushing the right buttons at the right times, getting the right guys out there, having the right different lineups to choose from. I don't even think I walked through Jabari's stat line earlier when I was talking. I just said he had, a fantastic defensive night, but 10 boards, 2 assists, 3 steals, a block, strong night from Jabari. And Sengun also. I want to give Sengun some flowers because Sengun was out there dealing with the physicality of the Milwaukee Bucks front line as well. 8 points, 8 boards, had a few assists, had a steal, a block, just 4 of 10 shooting from Sengun. Like a lot of the other guys on the roster, struggled, with his efficiency, struggled, in this game because it was just an ugly offensive game for everybody not named Jalen Green or I guess KJ Martin off the Rockets bench. But even Sengun was dealing with the physicality of this game, of Giannis Antetokounmpo, dealing with him on switches occasionally or dealing with the interior against Brook Lopez. And there was actually one moment that I had here in my notes that I wanted to point out with Jabari, and there was a foul. Jabari committed a foul on Brook Lopez with about 5.5 minutes left to play in the game, and it was because Sengun was switched out onto Giannis. Jabari was on the interior with Brook Lopez and kind of picked him up like half court and knew that he was going to have to try and body Brook Lopez down low to secure the rebound if a shot went up. And he was just like wrestling with Brook, like throwing elbows at his chest and everything. And then as soon as the whistle was blown, Jabari turns to Brook and had some words for him. Like was just like in his face, was like talking mess, all of that. And like seeing that from Jabari, like that's it, right? Like that fire, that intensity. And you saw it again on display in the final moments of this game when Jabari secured, his final rebound of the night and, had the ball, and then Giannis tried to get his arms in there and Jabari like ripped it away and they whistled the foul and Jabari got to walk down and go shoot free throws. And you could say like Jabari was fist pumping and he was fired up and he was energetic, all of that. Like, those moments are so big in the flow of a game, right? Having those big time moments where you stand up to somebody, you're jawing back and forth. We saw it in the Phoenix game with Jalen when he was jawing back and forth with Devin Booker, and that got Jalen fired up. Like, sometimes these young guys just need energy, right? They need energy to be able to get themselves fired up, and whether that energy comes from an opponent who is, talking smack, jawing back and forth, whatever, you got words flying left and right. Maybe that's where the energy comes from. Maybe there's, a crazy high flying play, big time dunk on offense or a crazy block on defense, what have you, something like that. 24-second defense, those kinds of things. Those are momentum building plays that these young guys kind of need and crave to then be able to have that momentum to carry them through the game. And you can also get that energy from your coach. And I thought that John Lucas, right, he was so just energetic and animated and demonstrative over there on the sidelines, jumping up and down, clapping, cheering his guys on. Like, that's something that John Lucas brings to the table as a coach. That's what he can give these guys, is he gives them that energy. And I thought, in the absence of Stephen Silas, John Lucas did, again, an incredible job coaching this Rockets team to a gutsy, emotional win against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, next episode, we're going to talk about some of the emerging and continued trade rumors surrounding Eric Gordon and his potential departure here in the not so distant future from the Houston Rockets. The unofficial start of trade season is December 15th. So our very next episode with weekly co-host Ben Dubose, we'll break down some of the trade speculation centered around Eric Gordon and also another name on the Houston Rockets, a name that we definitely don't want to see get moved, but is being thrown into conversations nonetheless. So be on the lookout for that. But as always, I appreciate you for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available on all podcast platforms. We're also available on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked on Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.